There are moments in life when the weight of waiting feels unbearable. When you've prayed and pleaded, when you've held on with everything you had and still it feels like heaven is silent. You've smiled through the pain, encouraged others while your own heart ached, and convinced yourself that maybe this is just how your story ends. But I came to tell you today, this is not the end. This is the setup. This is the prelude to breakthrough. This is the moment right before heaven opens and God pours out a blessing so heavy, so undeniable, that everything you've been through will make sense. There are seasons in life when everything feels like it's slipping away. You thought you were on the right path, that everything was falling into place, and then suddenly it all starts unraveling. The job you depended on lets you go. The relationship you thought would last forever comes to an end. The people you trusted walk away without explanation. It feels like the very foundation beneath you is crumbling, and you're left wondering, God, what is happening? It doesn't make sense in the moment. It feels unfair. It feels painful. But what if I told you that the disruption isn't destruction, it's preparation? When God is getting ready to bless you, He doesn't just add to what is already there. He clears out what can't go with you into your next season. He removes what is too small for the future He has prepared for you. The things you thought were permanent may have only been temporary placeholders until you were ready for more. And while it may feel like a loss, in reality it's an upgrade in disguise. Look at the times when Jesus performed miracles before the blessing came. There was often a disruption. When He fed the 5,000, the people had to first experience hunger. When He healed the blind, they had to endure their season of darkness. When He raised Lazarus from the dead, His family had to first grieve his loss. The pattern is always the same. Before the miracle, there is a moment where everything seems to fall apart. And it's in that moment that we have to choose, will we trust what we see, or will we trust what God is doing behind the scenes? There are some things that you've been holding on to that are actually holding you back. You've been clinging to relationships, opportunities, and places that feel familiar, even though they no longer fit where God is taking you. And because you won't walk away, God has to step in and remove them for you. Not because He wants to hurt you, but because He knows what's ahead. He knows that if you stay where you are, you will never step into the fullness of what He has for you. He knows that some people are only meant to be in your life for a season. And if you keep them too long, they will drain you instead of bless you. Disruption feels uncomfortable because it forces you out of what is familiar. It makes you question things. It makes you feel vulnerable. But the discomfort is necessary, because without it, you would stay where you are instead of stepping into where God wants you to be. Look at how an eagle teaches its young to fly. The mother eagle will start removing the soft feathers and comfortable layers from the nest, making it rough and unpleasant. The baby eagle, once comfortable, now feels uneasy and restless. And eventually, when the nest is no longer a place of comfort, the eaglet is pushed out. At first it feels like it's falling, but then something incredible happens. It learns to belay. God does the same with us. He starts to make the things that once felt comfortable feel unbearable. The job that once felt like a dream now feels suffocating. The friendships that once brought joy now feel draining. The habits that once felt harmless now feel heavy. You start to feel an inner restlessness, a divine discomfort, because God is shifting you. And if you don't move when He nudges, He will push you, not because He wants you to fall, but because He knows you were made to fly. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had dreams of greatness, but before he could walk in his destiny, his life was disrupted. He was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. If you had asked Joseph in the middle of his suffering if he still believed in his dreams, he might have struggled to answer. But what looked like rejection was actually redirection. Every setback was setting him up. Every painful moment was preparing him for the palace. And when the time was right, Joseph was elevated to a position of power he never could have imagined. That's what God is doing in your life. The things that didn't work out weren't meant to. The relationships that ended weren't failures, they were necessary transitions. The closed doors weren't punishments, they were divine protections. And while you may not understand it now, one day you will look back and see that the very thing you thought was breaking you was actually building you. There is a reason why you have been feeling the way you do. There is a reason why things are shifting, why doors are closing, why certain people can no longer stay connected to you. You are being prepared for more. And sometimes before God gives you the blessing, He has to remove the burdens. Before He brings new opportunities, He has to end old assignments. Before He increases your territory, He has to make sure you have the capacity to carry it. You may be wondering why everything is happening all at once, why life feels like a storm that won't pass. Why just when you thought you were getting ahead, something else comes and knocks you back. But let me remind you, when God is getting ready to elevate you, He will shake everything that is not stable. He will disrupt anything that is not built on a solid foundation. Because what He is about to do in your life requires a new level of strength, wisdom, and faith. And if He allowed you to stay where you were, you would never grow into who He called you to be. The frustration you feel right now is not the end of your story. The uncertainty, the discomfort, the moments of doubt, these are just signs that something greater is coming. And though you may not see it yet, trust that God is setting you up for something that will make every tear, every struggle, and every sleepless night worth it. There are seasons in life when heaven feels silent. You pray and the words seem to bounce off the walls. You cry out, but there is no answer. You open your Bible searching for a word, but nothing speaks to you the way it used to. You wake up each day hoping for a sign, some kind of reassurance, but all you hear is silence. And it's in that silence that doubt begins to creep in. You start wondering, God, do you still see me? Do you still care? Have you forgotten about me? You look around, and it seems like everyone else is moving forward, receiving blessings, getting breakthroughs, and yet here you are, stuck in a space where God feels distant. It can be one of the loneliest places to be, not because you're physically alone, but because the one you depend on the most seems out of reach. But what if the silence is an abandonment? What if the silence is part of the process? Because silence does not mean absence. Just because you can't hear God doesn't mean He isn't speaking. Just because you can't feel Him doesn't mean He isn't moving. His presence is not dictated by your emotions, nor is His faithfulness proven by how much noise He makes in your life. Sometimes the quiet seasons are the most important ones because they teach you to trust beyond what you can see, beyond what you can feel, beyond what makes sense. There's a reason why a teacher is silent during a test, not because they have abandoned the student, but because they have already given them everything they need to pass. When God is quiet, it is often because He has already spoken. He has already placed inside of you the wisdom, the strength, and the faith that you need for this moment. But instead of trusting what He has already done, we panic in the silence, thinking we've been left behind. We start questioning every decision, wondering if we missed a turn, if we messed up, if we did something wrong to make God go silent on us. But what if His silence is actually a sign that He trusts you? What if He is waiting for you to activate what He already placed inside of you? In the Bible, there were moments when God went silent before something significant happened. For 400 years between the Old and New Testament, there was no recorded prophecy, no divine revelation. Generations were born and died, waiting for a word from God, wondering if He had abandoned them. And then suddenly Jesus was born. The silence wasn't a sign that God had forgotten them. It was a setup for something greater. The same God who was quiet was the same God who was preparing the world for a miracle. And that's exactly what He does in our lives. When Jesus was on the cross, He cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Even in His darkest moment, He felt what we feel, the weight of silence, the feeling of separation. But was God really absent? Or was He working a plan so divine that even Jesus in His humanity couldn't see it fully in that moment? The silence of God on the cross was not rejection, it was redemption in process. Sometimes the silence is not evidence of abandonment, it is proof that something greater is being fulfilled. We are so quick to equate silence with punishment, as if God goes quiet because we have failed in some way. But think about the seasons in nature. The most growth happens underground in the places we can't see. The seed doesn't make noise when it's growing. The tree doesn't shout as it stretches toward the sky. The caterpillar doesn't cry out as it transforms in the cocoon. The work is happening in the stillness. And if God is quiet in your life, it may be because He is doing something deep within you, something that doesn't require an audience, something that is shifting your spirit, stretching your faith, and preparing you for what's next. There are some things that can only be learned in silence. When life is loud, when everything is moving, when people are constantly speaking into your life, it's easy to depend on outside voices. But when God allows the silence, He is teaching you how to listen differently. He is pulling you closer, removing distractions, and inviting you into a space where you learn to trust without needing constant reassurance. It's in the silence that your faith is refined. It's in the silence that your roots grow deeper. It's in the silence that you learn the difference between knowing about God and truly knowing Him. When you can't hear God, trust what you already know about Him. He is still the same God who carried you before. He is still the same God who made a way when there was no way. He is still the same God who turned your pain into purpose, your trials into testimonies, your weakness into strength. He hasn't changed just because you can't feel Him the way you used to. His silence is not His absence. His stillness is not neglect. He is working even now in ways you cannot see. And when the time is right, when the process is complete, when your heart is ready to carry what He is preparing, He will speak again. And what He says will change everything. There comes a moment in life when the weight of everything you're carrying feels unbearable. You've been pushing, praying, believing, and holding on, but instead of things getting easier, they seem to be getting harder. The pressure is mounting, the obstacles are increasing, and no matter how much you try to stay strong, Something inside of you is growing weary. You start wondering if you can keep going. You start questioning if you misheard God, if maybe you stepped in the wrong direction, if maybe the dream wasn't meant for you after all. It feels like everything is pressing in on you from all sides and you're doing everything in your power just to keep from breaking. But what if I told you that this pressure, this weight, this intensity you're feeling, it's not a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you're on the verge of breakthrough. Nothing great is birthed without pressure. No diamond is formed without immense heat. No seed breaks through the soil without first being buried. No baby enters the world without labor pains. And if you are feeling pressed, stretched, and tested right now, it is not because you are being crushed. It is because you are about to be released into something greater. Pressure is not punishment. Pressure is preparation. It is the process that turns potential into power. It is the refining fire that transforms who you are into who you were meant to be. It is the uncomfortable, stretching, painful in-between space where everything in you wants to quit, but something deeper in you knows that quitting is not an option. There is a moment in every struggle when the pressure reaches its peak, when it feels like you can't take one more step, when it seems like you are about to break. But that is also the moment right before something shifts. The enemy doesn't attack what isn't valuable. He doesn't fight what isn't a threat. And if you are under heavy pressure, it is because what is inside of you is powerful, and what is ahead of you is significant. The intensity of the battle is often a reflection of the greatness of the breakthrough that is coming. The closer you get to what God has for you, the harder the resistance becomes. But the enemy cannot stop what God has ordained. I think about a woman in labor. The pain intensifies right before delivery. The contractions get closer. The becomes unbearable. And just when she thinks she cannot endure another second, the baby is born. The suffering wasn't for nothing. The pain had a purpose. The pressure was necessary to push forth the promise. And some of you have been in spiritual labor carrying something inside of you that God is preparing to birth. The dream, the vision, the calling, the anointing, it has been growing, developing, and stretching you in ways you didn't expect. But now the contractions are hitting. The resistance is stronger. The pressure is heavier. And the temptation to give up is real. But this is not the time to quit. This is not the time to let go. This is the time to push. Every person who ever accomplished something great had a moment when they wanted to give up. Every victory story has a chapter filled with struggle, doubt, and hardship. David had to face giants before he could become king. Joseph had to endure betrayal, false accusations, and years in prison before he could step into his destiny. Job lost everything before God restored him. Jesus himself had to endure the cross before resurrection. The pattern is always the same. Before the promise is fulfilled, there is pressure. Before the breakthrough happens, there is a battle. What you are going through is not random. The enemy wants you to believe that you are struggling for no reason, that the pressure is pointless, that all your effort is in vain. But the devil is a liar. This pressure is not here to destroy you. It is here to strengthen you. It is here to build endurance in you. It is here to deepen your faith, sharpen your vision, and prepare you for what's next. If God allowed it, He is going to use it. And not only will you come out on the other side, but you will come out stronger, wiser, and more equipped than ever before. Some of you have been on the edge of breakthrough for so long, but the weight of the journey has made you second guess whether it will ever happen. You've been waiting, believing, standing in faith, but the delays, the detours, and the disappointments have made you tired. But you need to know that God has not forgotten about you. The pressure is not a sign of abandonment, it is a sign of acceleration. When the time is right, when the process is complete, when you have been fully prepared for the magnitude of what is coming, God will move suddenly. And everything you've been carrying, everything you've been praying for, everything you've been believing for, it will come forth. The breakthrough is closer than you think. The enemy would not be fighting you this hard if there wasn't something powerful on the other side. So don't retreat, don't back down, don't let the weight of the pressure convince you that you won't make it. What's coming is greater than what's been. What's ahead of you is bigger than what's behind you. Keep pressing, keep believing, keep pushing, because when the breakthrough comes, everything is going to change. There are moments in life when everything seems out of place. You look around and nothing makes sense. Doors you were sure would open remain locked. People you depended on suddenly walk away. Plans you made crumble before your eyes. And in the middle of it all, you wonder if God is still orchestrating things in your favor. You wonder if the delays, detours, and disappointments are signs that you've missed your moment, that you've fallen behind, or that maybe, just maybe, you were never meant to reach the place you dreamed of. But what if I told you that right now, even in the middle of the confusion, divine alignment is happening? What if I told you that God is arranging every detail, shifting every circumstance, and moving every piece into place, even when it feels like nothing is working out? Alignment does not always feel like advancement. Sometimes it feels like being pulled backward. It feels like losing things, like being repositioned, like going through a season of waiting that makes no sense. But just because you don't see progress does not mean it isn't happening. A bow has to be drawn back before it is launched forward. A seed has to go underground before it breaks through the surface. And then Masterpiece requires every brushstroke, even the ones that seem unnecessary to complete the vision. If God is shifting things in your life, it is because He is positioning you for something greater. There are connections being made right now that you don't even know about. There are conversations happening in rooms you haven't even entered yet. People discussing your name for opportunities that haven't even been revealed to you. The job you think you lost? It was never your source to begin with. The relationship that ended, it wasn't meant to go with you into your next season. The plan that didn't work out, it was God redirecting you towards something better. Nothing is random when it comes to God. Every step, every misstep, every moment of confusion is leading you somewhere greater. Joseph didn't know that being sold into slavery was divine alignment. It felt like betrayal, like loss, like everything was falling apart. But while he was being rejected by his brothers, God was placing him in the exact position he needed to be in to fulfill his destiny. What looked like a setback was actually a setup. What seemed like abandonment was actually acceleration. And the same God who aligned Joseph's steps is aligning yours. We serve a God who sees the end from the beginning. He knows exactly where you are, and He knows exactly what He is doing. Even the things that feel like delays are not delays at all. They are divine timing in disguise. Some blessings require preparation. Some doors won't open until the right people are in place. Some prayers won't be answered until you have the character to sustain the promise. And instead of seeing this season as something working against you, what if you started seeing it as something working for you? Think about a puzzle. When you first open the box, all you see are scattered pieces that don't make sense. Some of them look like they belong together, others seem completely out of place. But as you start putting them together, a picture begins to form. And piece by piece, what once seemed like a mess starts making sense. That is how divine alignment works. Right now you may be holding a piece that doesn't seem to fit. A season that feels unnecessary. A heartbreak that seems unfair. A loss that seems cruel. But what if that very piece is what connects you to your destiny? What if that very moment of confusion is what leads you to clarity? You have to trust that the same God who put the stars in the sky, who tells the ocean where to stop, who holds the universe in perfect balance, is the same God who is ordering your steps. He is the same God who is weaving every part of your life into something greater than you could ever imagine. And even when it feels like nothing is moving, like nothing is happening, like you are stuck in a place with no direction, trust that alignment is still happening. People are being moved in and out of your life according to His plan. Opportunities are being positioned for the exact moment you need them. Favor is being prepared for the season when you are ready to walk in it. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is forgotten. Nothing is happening by accident. And when the time is right, you will step into a moment where everything suddenly makes sense. The doors will open, the connections will align, and you will see that every step, every delay, and every unexpected turn was leading you to something far greater than you ever imagined. He said, there are few things harder to endure than waiting on God's timing. When you've prayed, when you've prepared, when you've positioned yourself in expectation, and see, nothing seems to be happening. The days turn into months, the months into years, and you begin to wonder if maybe you misheard God. Maybe the promise wasn't for you after all. Maybe the door you've been knocking on will never open. Maybe the dream you've been carrying will never come to pass. And in the middle of that waiting, doubt creeps in. Frustration builds. You start questioning God. Did you forget about me? Did I miss something? Am I wasting my time believing for something that will never happen? But what if I told you that you are not waiting in vain? What if I told you that God's silence is not His denial? What if I told you that the waiting is not wasted time, but preparation time, because God's timing is perfect, and if He hasn't opened the door yet, it's because what's behind it is not ready, or because you're not ready to walk through it just yet. There is a difference between delay and divine timing. When we see time, we see it in seconds, minutes, hours, days. But God sees it in purpose. He doesn't operate on our clocks. He moves according to His perfect plan. And if He is making you wait, it is because the time that is coming is better than the time that has passed. We think waiting means nothing is happening, but that is never the case. When you plant a seed, you don't see growth right away. For days, weeks, even months, nothing appears to be happening above the ground. But beneath the surface, roots are growing, strengthening, deepening, so that when the plant finally breaks through, it can sustain the growth that is coming. Some of you have been waiting for something to manifest in your life, but what if the waiting is actually God protecting you? What if the thing you are asking for is so great, so weighty, so filled with purpose, that to receive it too soon would crush you instead of bless you? Some doors don't open until your character has been refined. Some opportunities don't arrive until your spirit has been stretched. Some blessings don't come until you are truly ready to carry them. The blessing out of season can feel like a burden, but the blessing in God's timing will be something you can fully embrace. Abraham and Sarah waited years for their promised child, They doubted. They tried to make it happen on their own. They even laughed at the thought of God still fulfilling what he had spoken. But when the time was right, when their faith had been tested, when the promise could no longer be attributed to their own strength, but only to God's power, Isaac was born. The wait wasn't just about receiving a child. It was about shaping their faith, about teaching them to trust in the impossible, about showing them that what God speaks will always come to pass, no matter how long it takes. Jesus himself operated on divine timing. When Mary and Martha sent word that their brother Lazarus was dying, they expected Jesus to come immediately. But instead, he waited, he delayed. And by the time he arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. The people around him saw this as failure. If you had been here sooner, he wouldn't have died. But what they saw as God being late, God saw as an opportunity to show his power in a way that no one expected. If Jesus had arrived on their timeline, Lazarus would have been healed. But because he arrived on God's timeline, Lazarus was resurrected. And sometimes God delays what we think we need in order to give us something greater than we could imagine. We get frustrated with God's timing because we want control. We want to know when, how, and where things will happen. We want immediate results, instant answers, quick turnarounds. But God is not bound by our impatience. He knows what is best. He sees what we cannot see. He understands what we do not understand. And if we could just shift our perspective from frustration to faith, from doubt to trust, we would begin to see that every single moment of waiting is an act of love. Because when the door finally opens, you will realize why it took so long. When the prayer is finally answered, you will understand why it couldn't have come any sooner. When the opportunity finally presents itself, you will see that what you thought was a delay was actually divine alignment all along. God's timing is never off. It is never random. It is never without purpose. And if you are in a waiting season, it is because he is preparing something so perfect, so right, so beyond what you could orchestrate for yourself, that when it finally happens, you will look back and say, now I understand. Now I see why I had to wait. There are moments in life when everything in you wants to give up. You've prayed, you've fought, you've believed, and still nothing's to be happening. The weight of disappointment is heavy. The waiting is exhausting. And deep inside, you wonder if you're holding on to a promise that will never come. The enemy whispers, just let go. Stop expecting. Stop hoping. Stop believing. But something inside you refuses to quit. Something inside you still holds on, even when everything around you is telling you to let go. Holding on is not easy. Staying expectant when nothing seems to be changing is not easy. But faith is not about what you see, it's about what you know. And you have to know that God is faithful. You have to know that what he spoke over your life will not return void. You have to know that he is moving even when you don't see it. Because the moment you stop expecting is the moment you stop believing. And the moment you stop believing is the moment you forfeit what was already yours. Expectation is a posture of faith. It is the ability to stand in the middle of the storm and still believe that the sun will shine again. It is the ability to walk through a valley and still believe that the mountain is coming. It is the ability to experience delay after delay and still say, I know God is faithful. The enemy wants to steal your expectation because he knows that as long as you believe, you are dangerous. As long as you believe, you cannot be stopped. As long as you believe your breakthrough is inevitable. The woman with the issue of blood held on for 12 long years. She had every reason to give up. She had been to doctors, she had spent all her money, she had exhausted every option, and still she suffered. But when she heard that Jesus was coming, something inside her ignited. She didn't care about the crowd. She didn't care about the odds. She didn't care that society had written her off. She said to herself, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I will be healed. That is expectation. That is the kind of faith that refuses to die. That is the kind of belief that pushes through pain, through doubt, through discouragement, and reaches out for what belongs to you. And because she held on, because she stayed expectant, she was healed instantly. What if she had given up? What if she had let the years of disappointment convince her that nothing would ever change? What if she had let her discouragement keep her from stepping out in faith? She would have missed her moment. And that is exactly what the enemy wants for you to get so wearied, so tired, so frustrated that you stop pressing in for what's yours. But this is not the time to quit. This is not the time to settle. This is not the time to accept less than what God has for you. Some of you have been holding on for so long and you are right on the edge of breakthrough. You are closer than you think. You have come too far to turn back now. The pressure is heavy because the promise is near. The battle is intense because the blessing is great. And if you can just hold on a little while longer, if you can just keep expecting, keep believing, keep trusting, you will see the fulfillment of what God has spoken. Expectation changes everything. It shifts the atmosphere. It moves things in the spirit before they manifest in the natural. When you wake up expecting God to move, you walk differently. You speak differently. You pray differently. You no longer walk around defeated. You walk around in victory because you know that it's already done. The moment you stop expecting is the moment you allow doubt to take root. And once doubt takes root, it starts growing into fear, into frustration, into hopelessness. But when you expect, when you hold on, when you stay positioned in faith, nothing can shake you. Think about a pregnant woman. She doesn't wake up wondering if her baby will come. She knows it's coming. She doesn't question if it's real. She prepares for it. She sets up the nursery. She buys clothes. She gets everything ready, even though she hasn't seen the baby yet. Why? Because she has expectation. She knows that at the right time what she's been carrying will be birthed. And that is the kind of faith God wants you to have. He wants you to prepare for what He has promised. He wants you to get ready, to make room, to position yourself for the blessing. Because when you expect, you activate faith. And when you activate faith, mountains move, doors open, miracles happen. Holding on doesn't mean you won't get weary. It doesn't mean you won't have moments of doubt. It doesn't mean you won't feel like giving up. But it means that despite all of that, you refuse to let go. It means that you remind yourself of every word God has spoken, every promise He has made, every time He has come through in the past. It means that even when your mind is full of questions, your spirit is full of faith. God is not a man that He should lie. What He said He will do, what He promised He will fulfill. Your job is to hold on, to stay expectant, to refuse to quit. Because when you least expect it, when it feels like nothing is happening, when it seems like all hope is lost, that is the moment when everything shifts. The breakthrough is coming. The promise is near. The blessing is already set in motion. Stay ready, stay expectant, stay in faith, because what God has for you is worth the wait. So don't fade, don't quit. Don't give up. Your blessing is closer than you think. Your miracle is on the way. Your breakthrough is at the door. And when it comes, you're not just going to be blessed, you're going to be unrecognizable. Because what's coming next will change everything. Hold on, believe, trust, and get ready. God is about to bless you.